Hi there, I'm Vincent Boss and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing when does your ex think of you? I provide audio coaching to help people try and get their ex back or get a new girlfriend or boyfriend. Check out my website for more details. www.dateme.tips. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. So now let's get back into today's podcast. And today we are discussing when does your ex think of you? So if you have been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, you will likely wonder if and when your ex will think of you. In today's podcast, I'll be discussing 3 instances when a dumper is likely to think of their dumpee. So let's get straight into this. And point number 1 is when you remove your interest. So if you have been dumped, it might seem counterintuitive to try and remove your interest in regards of hoping to increase the chance of getting your ex back. But let me tell you, my research suggests that this is absolutely your best way forward. Now, I must say there are caveats to this, there are exceptions to the rule, and that is why you have to appreciate that this and all of my other podcasts have to be generalized. They can't be based on your unique specific instances because of course I don't know them. But in a generalized instance, I would say if you have been dumped, your best opportunity to try and get your ex back is to never contact your ex again. That is, never contact your dumper again unless they contact you first. So why is this? Well, we are trying to get your ex dumper to think of you. And this is the point of today's podcast. When does your ex think of you? And point number 1 is when you remove your interest. If you remove your interest, the natural human response is for somebody to wonder about you. Now, a dumper does not, in most situations, want their dumpee to reach out to them. Most dumpers do not want to be chased by their dumpee, but that doesn't mean that they will be expecting you to follow their wishes. So it's a bit of a bizarre scenario to get your mind around, but that is how it is. So your ex-dumper doesn't want you to reach out, but they are expecting you to reach out. And if you don't contact them, if you remove your interest, if you stop chasing them, if you don't text them, if you don't call them, if you don't knock on their door, you don't wait outside where they work, you don't get people to pass on messages, you don't contact on social media, you get the point. If you remove your interest, your ex-dumper is likely to wonder about you. They're likely to think about you. And this is the first step to hopefully, from your perspective, reconnect with your dumper. It is the first step on your journey. And this is because it increases the chance of romantic emotional attraction being grown in your dumper's mind. Now, when you and your ex were in a loving relationship, you both felt a high level of romantic emotional attraction for one another. Now, unfortunately for you, the dumpee, your ex, the dumper, had their attraction level drop. And when it hit the necessary low point, this is when they action the breakup. So when they action the breakup, they are feeling a low level of romantic emotional attraction for you. We need that level to grow. We need that level to hit the high point because that is the moment they will likely reach out to you. And this is when reconnection can start to take place. But the first step on that journey is for them to think of you. The first step on that journey is for you to remove your interest, and therefore they start to think and wonder about you. Because this is where romantic emotional attraction can start to grow. Wonder can develop into missing you. And even if you were dumped for a reason that you think your ex would never forgive you for, there is a chance that they could still miss you. Now, I'm not here to say that this will definitely happen. There is no 100% guaranteed way to get your ex back. Nothing works 100% of the time, and nothing fails 100% of the time. So you have to understand that there is no paint-by-numbers advice to definitively get your ex back. But what I can say in point number 1, if you remove your interest, you will grow that possibility of them thinking about you, your dumper wondering about you, and even if your breakup was a messy breakup, a bad breakup, something you don't think your ex could ever get over, let me tell you, I've seen some crazy scenarios take place. There is something called the fading effect bias, and this dictates that negative memories lose their value sooner than positive memories. It doesn't mean that somebody will forget something bad that happened, but what it does mean is over time, what happened holds less weight. So a bad memory and a positive memory of equality, you could say, when time moves forward, what happens is the positive memory still shines bright. The negative memory, it will still be remembered, but it won't hold as much value. This is why there is an opportunity for a dumper to start wondering about you and maybe considering that they made the wrong choice. If you think of a scenario where you look back in your life and somebody says to you, hey, you're wearing rose-tinted glasses, that is an example of a fading effect bias, because your dumper could at some stage start to think more favourably about a situation that at the time they made clear they would never contact you, speak to you or be with you again. It doesn't definitely happen, but it can happen. But it will only happen if you remove your interest, give them the space to think about you, ultimately miss you. So now let's get into point number 2 and the second point of today's podcast about when does your ex think of you. And point number 2 is when romantic emotional attraction is high. So linking on to that point, what we can see is if you grow romantic emotional attraction, this will create a snowball effect where if you imagine the thinking and the thoughts get bigger and bigger and bigger, this is when your ex-dumper will think of you even more. When you were together in a relationship, I'd already said that the romantic emotional attraction was high for both of you. You were feeling it for them, they were feeling it for you, and you were thinking about each other almost constantly, certainly a lot of the time. So this attraction was lost, as we unfortunately said, the breakup took place. But if you do everything right, if you grow romantic emotional attraction in your ex's mind, if it hits that necessary high point, this is when that attraction level is so high that the dumper will be thinking of you often. And this is how, from point number 1, we can move into that position where they will eventually reach out to you. So the snowball effect is what we need, but how we get there will depend on your specific circumstances, your unique situation regarding the relationship, the breakup and the aftermath. There are lots of hints, tips and advice that I give in other podcasts, and I've just mentioned in point number 1 that removing your interest, which is in essence my version of a no contact rule, is your first step. But if you want further support on this, if you want advice about how you can increase the chance of regrowing that romantic emotional attraction in your dumper's mind, then you may want to consider my audio coaching service where me and you can speak one-on-one. I'll become your teammate and your coach, and we'll take this journey together to increase your chance of success. If you want more details on my audio coaching service, then please check out my website, www.dateme.tips, for more details on my audio coaching service and how I can become your coach and your teammate. If we can grow that romantic emotional attraction in your ex's mind, they will think about you often. Right now, or at least for most dumpees who are going through the grind, your ex is probably not thinking of you on a day-to-day basis. It doesn't mean they're not thinking of you still. Your ex-dumper will never forget you. But if their attraction level is low, they're not going to be thinking about you 24/7 like you are thinking of them. We need to grow that opportunity. And the first step potentially is for you to actually subscribe to my YouTube channel and check out the other content I've uploaded to get some of those generalized hints and tips, along with point number 1 in today's podcast about removing your interest. That will get you on your way to hopefully give you the best chance of success. But if you want that specialized advice where we can speak about something that's not generalized, it's actually you and your life, then audio coaching could be for you. www.dateme.tips. So now let's get into point number 3 and the final point of today's podcast about when does your ex think of you. And point number 3 is triggers. So we've already spoke about my version of a no contact rule, the concept of when you remove your interest. We've also spoke about if you do this and the other hints and tips that I give, you can create a snowball effect, grow that romantic emotional attraction, and you could be in a position where your ex, the dumper, is thinking of you almost constantly because the attraction is so high. But now in point number 3, we're talking about triggers, because these are things which can really help your cause. And the good news is you've already put in the work. Triggers are things you don't have to do anything about right now because the hard work was done within your relationship. Triggers are wide-ranging and triggers will last for a very long time in your ex-dumper's mind. So let's give some examples. First, we're going to speak about triggers connected to dates, triggers connected to anniversaries. So, in particular, for the first year after your breakup, there will be many anniversaries. There will be birthdays, there will be Christmases, there will be New Year's, there will be the anniversary of you getting together, and unfortunately, the anniversary of you breaking up, along with lots of other potential cultural or specialist anniversaries between you and your ex. These dates hold power because when we have a special date on the calendar, we naturally think back to the prior year. So for instance, on New Year's Eve, you will automatically think, what was I doing last New Year's Eve? And if you was with your ex, there is every opportunity that you will think of them and they will think of you. This will happen on all of those specialist dates. So think how many anniversaries there are for you. Think over the next year how many opportunities there is for your ex to think of you just by noticing what day of the year it is. Now, once a year has come and gone, the chances of hearing from your ex-dumper again do unfortunately drop somewhat. They don't completely vanish though. I've known of many instances where dumpers have reached out to dumpees many years later. But my research does show that unfortunately that when a year is gone since the breakup, when it's been more than a year since you were dumped, your chances of reconnecting do start to fall. It doesn't mean it's impossible, but it does mean it's less likely. And that is somewhat because the triggers regarding dates are less powerful. That doesn't mean that your ex-dumper won't think of you on these days anymore, but when it's 5, 6, 7 years later, those days will hold a little less value because they will think back to the prior year, and of course, you wouldn't have been in that. That is why they have less impact than during that first initial year. But what are the other triggers? Well, there are many, and I'll just mention a few right now. So one example that lots of people have potentially heard of already is music. You hear a song and you think, oh, well, that was our song. That was a song we always used to listen to. You and your ex will automatically think of each other when you hear that song. Now, how about a trigger which is a little less well known, and that is smell. Smell is a very powerful memory trigger. So for instance, if you wear a certain perfume or a certain cologne, a certain aftershave, a certain scent, whatever you may wear, whatever you may smell like, if your ex, the dumper, smells that smell again, they will likely think of you, just as you would if you smelt a smell that reminded you of your former partner. Smell is very, very powerful, and it can also connect to location. You might smell a smell and it reminds you of when you went somewhere, you went on a trip, and this makes you think of when you was with your ex. Locations themselves are also triggers. Maybe you go somewhere and you think, well, the last time I was here, or the last time I was at a place like this, similar to this, I was with my ex. So for instance, if your ex, the dumper, goes to a beach, a seaside resort, They might think back to the last time they was at a beach, they was at a seaside resort. It doesn't even have to be the same beach, just the last time they was at a beach. And if you was with them, that is when they potentially might think of you. Triggers are wide-ranging. I speak about them in other podcasts. There are plenty more that I've not even touched upon today, so please check out my other content and find out all of the potential triggers. Once again, we could speak about this during audio coaching and see how there are extra opportunities for your ex to think of you. Just remember that whatever happens in the future, you'll be absolutely fine. With or without your ex, you can and will have a positive future if you live your life moving forward and remembering that you are the prize. If your ex doesn't come back, then somebody else will treat you with the love and the respect that you deserve. You will feel happiness again. Even if it's not with your ex, it can and it will happen. With or without your ex, you will have a positive future. If you believe that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description.